Hey there friends, and welcome to day 5 of our Christmas in July tutorial series here on my channel. If you're just joining in, you can find links to the first 4 days at the top of the description so you can get caught up. And if you're new around here, I hope you will consider hitting the subscribe button to join our crafty little family. Before we get started with our tutorial today, I wanted to take a minute to congratulate my sweet friend Amber over at Lyric Lover Crafts for reaching the 100,000 subscriber milestone. She is just amazing and a big inspiration to the entire crafting community. So I wanted to let her know I am so happy for her and proud of her awesome achievement. I'll leave a link to her channel at the top of the description so you can hop on over there and leave her a little love from the Polly's peeps. She is also hosting a Christmas in July series, so make sure to check out her great projects. Don't forget to visit us on Instagram for daily holiday crafty inspiration. And for our project today, we're using our scraps to create sweet and simple greeting cards. So that's what we're going to do today. If that sounds good to you, stick with me and we'll make it together. Before we get going, just a quick reminder to watch out for the question of the day. Now let's get started. While I was gathering up the supplies I knew I wanted to use for this series, I ran across these 2 pages of cut aparts. They're both from Carta Bella, 2 different collections. I really love the sentiments in them. I really love those wood look frames. They're kind of chalkboardy in the background, so it kind of reminds me of a country Christmas, kind of rustic. So I picked these up, and then I picked up this set as well. So this one is Happy Christmas, and this one is Home for Christmas. My whole plan for these was to go ahead and cut them up and use them as sentiments on my sweet and simple cards. So you can see there's a lot of variety on here. Some of them have sentiments, some are just flowers. There's a couple here that are a little smaller, and I have a plan for those, but I'm gonna revisit that later when we use them in a project. But this is gonna go a long way. I mean, I got so many cards and tags out of these 2 sheets of paper, and since I know that many of the projects I'm using in this series have a fairly traditional color palette, I knew this was going to work with so many of them. I'll just show you again the 2 that we've used so far. You can see those plaids and those traditional colors are gonna work great with that cut apart. Now, I try very hard not to create the scraps. I really work to utilize every piece, but it just happens, and so I've decided rather than throwing those scraps back into the sleeves and putting them back into the storage, that I would go ahead and utilize those for my sweet and simple cards. So this is what I have left after the cards that we're going to make today. You can just see these smaller bits and how we use those in our paper bag album. So we have quite a few left here. I'm going to wait until I have a little bit more variety to have another round of simple card making, but these are not going to go back in storage. I'm just going to put these in a bin and set them aside until I can add to them. But I think it's just really important to utilize those scraps instead of letting them take up room in your storage. So I've just got my plan for today is to create A2 size cards, and I think that works so well for scraps because you can really build some fun backgrounds by joining your papers together. And so the base for my cards is going to be 65 pound weight cardstock. It's 4 1/4 by 11 and scored at 5 1/2, and that is going to be the standard A2 size card. You can flip that and change the direction around if you want a profile or a landscape, but that overall dimension is going to stay the same. So if you want to build your simple cards with the layers in the cardstock like I do, you want to start with a cardstock, and this is going to be your border. I think the one thing I can recommend for anyone who wants to make really sweet cards but quickly and utilize a lot of your supplies is to decide that you're going to limit your options. So don't pull every die out of your set. Don't pull every flower out. You want to simplify this process. So you're going to get a different look by combining your papers, but it will be easier to not redesign the whole thing every time. So I'm going to use my Cinch and Go poinsettia. I'm going to use my recollection die. I'm going to use the same set of those cut apart images. That will help me to make these really quickly. This is also a way to craft while you're doing other things. So I might put the race on later, go forward, or I could watch football if it's during that season. There's many things you can do while you're crafting if you simplify this process. So I'm not trying to redesign a new card for every different layout. So the first thing I want to do is start with that cardstock. I chose to work with green, and the measurement for this is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. We're going to get a border of the base, and then we're going to have this as a border for our pattern paper. And before we go too much further, let me show you, I've already finished the inside with the coordinating paper. That's just another good way to work through that stash. So I've got the cardstock border, and here is my first pattern to layer on. I'm not going to give you the measurements for this because you'll arrive at different scraps than I did, but I just wanted it to kind of pattern block as I go in. So I'm going to separate this one into 2 portions using these 2 very contrasting colors and very different kind of scale. This is kind of large. It has a very light background. This is very dark, and that plaid, of course, is going to be a nice geometric with our floral. I'm just laying that down on there, and you'll notice there is a little bit of that green cardstock showing. I'm going to keep that consistent throughout because that really does help to keep those busier patterns separate. So another thing I'll do for my simpler cards is kind of forego as many of the dimensional layers. So on my regular cards, I would probably be reaching for my foam tape right now, but because these are a little bit simpler, I'm going to limit the dimensional layers. And so this makes them really nicer to mail. They'll still fit in an envelope. I can't promise you that you're not going to need some additional postage on that, an extra stamp, but these are also good, I think, for having a random act of kindness stack. I really like to give out coffee cards or just, brighten a stranger's day with a simple card. And because these are all scraps, I don't have to cut into new paper to make them, and so I can really help someone out and have some extra holiday joy. Okay, here's that doily that I mentioned previously. This is the Recollections doily. It's not important that you use this one. Just stick with one that you know will be good. And I really like this because it has a chunkier kind of detail on the outside. It isn't so frilly, so I can cut these pretty quickly. I only have to poke out a few of these bits, and I'm not spending forever with the pokey tool in between each one. So this helps me to create many of them very quickly. So here's our first image. I picked this one. I thought it was just very sweet, and the image is a little bit smaller. So I decided for this card, I could put 2 flower arrangements on. I'm only gonna use the same amount of flowers for each card, but for this one, I can divide it and kind of create a nice balance from the top to the bottom. So you can see how important that doily was in breaking up those darker colors. This would really be lost on that red background. This is the place that I decided to use my foam spacers. This is a very special focal point, and I wanted it to pop off of the card base. So here's my flowers, and I picked my Cinch and Go poinsettia. I'll use that throughout. The one difference that you'll see between my standard cards and the ones that I'm making today is I switched out the center. Rather than having those double-headed stamens, I'm going to just cut some glitter paper with my Spellbinders Be Bold Blooms. And this is just a lot of beautiful detail, but it doesn't add dimension. I did pinch these flowers and fold them up, so they're a little bit dimensional, but they are much flatter than the ones with the stamens. I'm going to divide these flower arrangements, one on the top and one on the bottom. And because this is a flower, I don't really mind covering that flower on the bottom. I just want to create a good balance. You still need to adhere these with hot glue though, so let's do that now. So there's my first card all ready to gift to someone, and the inside looks just as nice as the outside. So this is one combination of the profile, and it is split between two patterns. So let's move on to the next one. All of the measurements for this will be the same. It just depends on how many patterns that you stack, but the outside dimensions will be the same. So here is that very sweet scripty fonts on a craft background. This also came from our paper bag album, and so I'm just gonna continue to build these using all of those nice borders. And this one I'm gonna split the pattern from the side rather than top to bottom. So this is just another way to combine your background. Make sure that you're keeping an eye on the scale and the color. So this is a larger pattern with a lighter background, and this is darker with a more condensed pattern. So remember, this did come from our 6x6 paper pad. That helps to keep the scale of these patterns small enough for an A2 size card. Let's just add that right to our top folding card base, bringing back in that same doily. And then this time the image has the sweet little Christmas tree, and that is going right in the center. I just have one flower arrangement for this card, but it's the same amount and the same type of flowers. Here's a little bit of pretty wrinkle ribbon. This is the red wrinkle ribbon. It's a May Art, and I picked this up from Really Reasonable Ribbon. And so I think that just coordinates with all of these more vintagey colors. So I'm just going to go right along the bottom and being careful not to cover that tiny little sentiment there. So here is card 2, and the inside once again is finished just like the outside. For the last card, I'm switching up the orientation, and I'm switching to a landscape, and that's because the image that I wanted to use worked better as a landscape profile. So here is beautiful poinsettia on craft. Gonna continue to build with those same outside measurements. I'm splitting this one top to bottom with one of the offcuts again from our paper bag album and the beautiful green cardstock. This time I did switch the pattern on the inside just to have a large enough piece to cover that much space. Bringing our Recollection doily back in. And here is that sentiment. You see how it looks better as a landscape. Beautiful scripty font with tiny little Christmas trees. That wood grain is working so well with all of these traditional colors. This is pretty much the same arrangement of our flowers and trim as the last card. You can decide for yourself if you want to include some sequins or charms, but I think they look pretty sweet just as they are. Now time for the question of the day. Would you rather watch a Hallmark movie or a holiday comedy? For me, I'm going to say holiday comedy all day long. Our favorite movie is the Christmas Vacation. Tech Hubby and I go every year to Frankenmuth. All of my Michigan people shout out Frankenmuth. You'll know exactly what that is. We go there every year to Bronner's and pick up a new edition for our Department 56 collection with the Christmas Vacation theme. So let me know in the comments if you're a Hallmark or if you're a comedy. So that's all for day 5 of our 12 Days of Christmas in July series. Don't forget to come back tomorrow for day 6. If you enjoyed this tutorial, remember to comment, like, and subscribe. You can find links for all our socials in the description below. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.